Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon and welcome to The Post 29, the Flamingo Supervisor. This is the second last instalment of our pernicious PhD Supervisor series, and as you can see this week I have a friend, Placido Flamingo. As you know, Jamie and I are still in temporary accommodation and we don't have a lot. We obviously have deep and profound love for each other, and we also have a flamingo, obviously. But the flamingo academic and the flamingo supervisor are not only irritating, that's bad enough, but they're destructive in their behaviours, destructive of collegiality, destructive of the very standards of excellence that we have in our universities. Now, as we know, the Chihuahua was underconfident, expressing fear through barking behaviours. But the flamingo is the exact opposite. They're not very bright and they're incredibly confident. Yes, they thieve the achievements of others, but they also associate themselves with the research output and the research successes of others. They continue, as they thieve, to look fabulous and keep walking. There is nothing in a flamingo but intellectual theft and achievement through association. So that combination is profoundly destructive for PhD students, because you need to locate and label this type of supervisor really, really early, because they will destroy your career. Not only will they scoop up all your achievements and keep walking, but you're never actually going to tell what's real and what's a lie and what's true and what's just simply PR. The flamingo has been created through the neoliberal university. They are a pretender, they are a prancer. They maintain incredible confidence without any evidence or verification of and for that confidence. So I'll give you a couple of examples of two flamingos that I know. And can I say, most departments, most schools have at least two or three, and they are increasing in number. But let me tell you about two particular different types of flamingos. Now, one is a pretty senior academic, and he's spent his entire academic life being in the location where other really, really bright people are creating and developing ideas. So he's lived his entire career pinching the ideas of others. And my favourite example from this bloke, and this is a true story, my favourite example from this bloke is he was having a cup of coffee in the staff tea room when other academics in the school were having a meeting while having a cup of coffee, talking about a research idea, research project, funding partner, really the whole fleshing out of a project, yeah? And he was just having a cup of coffee. And he later claimed, and succeeded in this claim, to state that he had authorship rights on that article because he was present in the tea room when the idea was discussed. Now, he fought and fought and fought and got angry and got nasty, and he scratched his way into authorship on that article. So, if the flamingo is anywhere near any human doing great teaching and great research, they're going to claim that their presence should be acknowledged. So the consequence of that particular flamingo in that department is now, whenever he walks in a room, colleagues shut down, they're silent, and they invariably now, in disgust, walk out of that room. He's a taker. Oh yeah, he's not a giver. He's a user, not a thinker. Now, another great example of a flamingo, this is a different one, is an underperforming academic who happens to be in the right place at the right time. So a woman, for example, in a field dominated by men. So quite rightly, all sorts of support structures are put in place to overcome systematic misogyny. We all get that, we understand that, so that's what's happened to this woman. Now, the problem with this particular woman is she can't actually do it. She's not very bright, so she's had to be removed from any research role in that field. She's so poor, she's no longer research active. She therefore can't supervise PhD students. But this woman is in a field dominated by men. So what she does now is apply for a series of awards. Local awards, awards in professional organisations. Basically, if an award is going, girlfriend, she is going to apply for it. And she gathers up all these awards for simply being a woman in this field. Her actual ability, intelligence and skill level is profoundly questionable, but yeah, she's got a lot of awards. And she continues to gain profile through association. So when anybody is successful in her field, in her department, in her school, in her university, she immediately, through social media, inserts herself as close as possible to this other successful human. So she is gaining profile through association. Now, as I've been constructing this taxonomy, you've probably recognised a large number of people in your life, in your university, and this is a common model, and it's an increasingly common model. The flamingo is the confident pretender in our universities. Beautiful, mobile, lacking ethics, decency, accountability, and they're certainly not trustworthy. They are particularly dangerous for PhD students because they do not know what they're doing, but they think they know what they're doing. And to give you an example of the danger of this model for students, I recently examined a PhD and I failed it. And can I say, all the international examiners also failed it. It's one of only 4 of the hundreds of PhDs I've examined in my career. I've only failed 4. And what became very clear as the external examiners were trying to help the university sort out this shambles is that the supervisor had absolutely no idea what he was doing. He was confident that the research was strong, the thesis was strong, but actually the work was incredibly poor. It would have been a very poor honours thesis. Would have got a 3rd, would have been a very poor capstone project. So as you can see, the flamingo is therefore incredibly dangerous to students because they're all flash, all selfishness, all image, and wow, that combination in a supervisor can lead to a student having no sense of where they're at or the standards that are required. What's important? What's ethical? What's meaningful in academic life? Yeah. So let's talk about the Flamingo Supervisor and then the 5 strategies to manage this very, very difficult scholar. Flamingos are a wading bird. And when a group of flamingos are together, they're described as a flamboyance of flamingos. How fantastic is that? Flamboyance of flamingos. So, the word flamingo comes from the Spanish, obviously referring to flame coloured. The greatest flamingos that are known are, of course, the greater flamingo. There's the lesser flamingo, the Chilean flamingo, the Andorian flamingo, the American flamingo, the Chilean flamingo. Young flamingos are hatched with that sort of amazing fluff that's sort of a grey with a little bit of a tinge of red, rather than the famous pink. Now, this colour is achieved due to their diet. So it's aqueous bacteria, beta-carotene, and so their diet is shrimp, but also blue-green algae, but also small insects and tiny crustaceans. The healthiest of flamingos are the brightest of colours. And of course, the colour is used to attract a healthy mate. They are also, besides being incredibly visible, also incredibly noisy. Their vocalizations include grunting, growling, and my personal favourite, honking. Flamingos are social birds. They live in large social colonies. The courtship displays involve synchronous rituals, and the mated pair are territorial and aggressively defend their territory. They are beautiful birds, invested in ritual and performance. They protect their territory, and they're pretty damn ungainly, but completely unaware of it. So when we take these particular characteristics into a model of supervision, you can see their appropriateness. So the Flamingo Supervisor is self-absorbed, self-focused, endlessly feeding their ego, feeding their confidence, stealing what they can from their environment to enhance their profile, their stature, their size, their colour. Now, Ryan Holiday, I love this. Ryan Holiday made a really great point that when these supposedly endless success stories of academic life are told, you know, some random gets up and tells the success story of their lives, too often, you know, luck is left out of the narrative. How was this person successful? Well, they were pretty lucky, right? But also what's left out of this narrative is the stress of success, the fear of success, the mistakes, the flaws, and the errors. And you see, what happens is the flamingo simply scoops up the success of others, claims it as their own, and keeps walking, looking beautiful, looking graceful, without ever recognizing or understanding the hard work, the pain, the fear that goes into the success that they have just appropriated. Okay, so the flamingo also, though, misses out on a lot. And I've been thinking a lot, really, for the last month as I've been working on the flamingo, about Ryan Halliday's maxim, the obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the way. And the flamingo steps over obstacles. It grabs the success of others that have had to battle and battle through those obstacles. But without obstacles in one's life, what happens? Well, an unhealthy belief in one's importance, no understanding of fear, no understanding of failure. So people start to think that they're terribly important, better than others, arrogant, ambitious, self-absorbed. But of course, success is more than confidence. Success is more than recognition. A Flamingo Supervisor cannot teach you these tough lessons about research, about work, and about life. Once more, as with so many of the pernicious PhD supervisors in this series, the flamingo is a byproduct of our contemporary university sector that is validating very, very superficial metrics, short-term micro successes. Short-term micro successes, rather than the achievements that take a career, a lifetime to create. And that's why we so rarely these days hear words like esteem, ethics, respect, decency. Because esteem takes decades to create and can be lost in seconds. But the long-term accomplishments of an academic life, of a scholarly life, cannot be measured through impact or engagement or even citations. Therefore, the flamingo has really found their time. Oh yeah, because they're pretty, they're ruthless, they're mobile, and they're territorial. So the goal is to gather up all these high quality ideas from others to increase their luster, their high colour, their profile. Now for students, This is absolutely devastating. Students, of course, don't have the research or the background or the experience or the expertise to read this behaviour and run away. They see a beautiful colour, they see a proud strut and believe the flamboyance. But there is actually nothing below the pretty pink feathers. It is that old cliche that I use a lot. We don't know what we don't know. And of course, students are convinced by the strut and the colour and the confidence. So if you, as I've been speaking today, if you believe that your supervisor is a flamingo, oh yeah, or indeed I'm hoping you're about to take on a supervisor and you're recognising some of these characteristics and you can turn away from the supervisor, I want to give you five strategies to manage these supervisors. And can I say, it's not just about supervision here. Through your academic career, through the workplace, you are going to endlessly meet flamingos. Now, as someone who's had to manage flamingos for decades, can I say they are the most frustrating people you will ever work with, because they just simply can't get out of their self-absorption. And of course, they're not very bright. So we can offer a critique, we can go to performance reviews and all those sorts of things, but they're not very bright. So they don't take on the critique and try and change, they simply ignore it. And we need to grasp, therefore, in this particular vlog, that flamingos will not change. And that is why so many colleagues avoid them, remain silent around them and completely ignore them in their professional lives. So this is really serious. You're going to meet these people. Let's hope they're not your supervisor, but if they are, here are 5 strategies to manage a flamingo. Let's do this. 1, okay. Be a part of the flock of flamingos, the flamboyants, but know when to leave. Okay. Being with a flamingo supervisor means that you're going to be in institutional newsletters a lot. There's going to be lots of pictures of you with your supervisor on institutional Twitter feeds. Wherever there is a camera, wherever there is an award, your supervisor is going to be there. And if the Vice-Chancellor or President there, your supervisor is going to get as close to the Vice-Chancellor as they can for the picture. So early on in your candidature, look, this drip, 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 drip of profile is probably useful to you, okay? Because you sort of get known, you get seen, your name gets known. What you've got to avoid is getting known that you're supervised by a flamingo. And look, profile is important. Don't misread what I'm talking about this week. Your profile is incredibly important. I don't want you locked in an attic reading and writing and no one reading your work. I want the exact opposite. But what I'm trying to convince you of, to make a case for you, is that this profile must be real. It must be authentic and based on the research and the teaching that you've actually done. Not a profile by association, not aggressively scratching yourself into papers or applying for banal awards. So enjoy the profile of the flamingo, get known, but also know the value and basis of an authentic profile. Make sure you connect up research dissemination with research outputs. So connect work with dissemination. Now, the flamingo is lazy. The flamingo is a pretender. Therefore, you as a student must know when to leave this supervisor, when to just stop all the superficiality, yep? Profile is great. It is. But that thesis is going to be examined, not by Twitter, by international experts in the field. So have you worked hard enough? Is the research strong enough? Now remember, the flamingo will not be able to help you determine the standard or the level of your thesis, whether or not it will pass through examination, because they don't know. Therefore, really make sure in these cases that you've got a hard-working co-supervisor. Now, your principal supervisor may be a flamingo swanning about, that's great, but make your co-supervisor a duck. Hard-working, productive, slog, not swagger. The flamingos, remember, consider themselves special, unique, remarkable people, but they maintain no responsibility for others, and that includes students. They want to stand out, and they don't care what they have to do, how many people they have to chew through to stand out. So make sure you, as a student, you're not those little shrimp that they eat and digest to enhance their pinkness. 2. Know that the flamingo is exhausting. Give them some attention that they require, and then move on to other issues and people. Flamingos are increasing in number in our universities, and they are completely exhausting. They're hard to avoid. If you can, obviously, select a different supervisor. But the problem you've got is that flamingos are populating universities in greater numbers. They're harder to avoid. But the best way to determine, a diagnostic, if you will, to locate a flamingo is to have a meeting with one. Okay, here we go. Now, I just want to make a meta point here. Time is the most precious resource that any of us have. We are dead a long time. So when I respect another human being, I respect their time. So if I have a meeting with another person, every time, even if it's a 20-minute meeting, I do preparation for that meeting. So I read about that person, I read some of their publications, I get a good sense of them as a human. I respect them and their time by doing my preparation. Preparation is how we express respect. Now, I would argue that's the gift of academic life, because it's a great gift to have a meeting with someone and acknowledge the expertise and the brilliance and the excellence of another human. And when we respect the achievements of others on their own terms, then we learn some positive lessons about excellence rather than losing ourselves in jealousy or rage or silly gossip, right? Anyway, so I meet with a lot of flamingos and have throughout the last 20 years of my career. And my favourite story involves meeting with one. Actually, it was over dinner. And so I'd done my preparation. I knew who I was meeting pretty clearly, but I congratulated her on her research. I talked about her research, congratulated her on her role and her title. And when I did that, of course, she preened and fluffed up, like all flamingos do, and explained how incredibly proud she was of herself, and then proceeded to do the endless, we're used to it, the career narrative, where she explained her profound successes for about 12 minutes. She basically didn't take a breath and told me about how fantastic she was for 12 minutes. And then she finally took a breath and took a sip of wine, and she looked at me and she said, "What's your name again?" And I said, "Tara. My name's Tara." And she looked at me straight in the eye and said, "I've never heard of you." And of course I replied, "Well, of course you wouldn't. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. But it's been lovely to meet you." Now the flamingo got pretty confused by that, did the weird sort of like dog side look. And I use that a lot, by the way, because I believe it. We are, all of us, we're nobodies. We're nothing. We're dead a long time. Walk the earth gently. None of us are that important. And then we die, okay? So the best way to respond to a flamingo, I think the best way to respond in life, is to be small, be humble, be open to learning from others, to walk gently on the earth. But you gain from doing this with a flamingo because you keep the focus on them, and they'll get bored because you're nobody. They'll get bored and they'll strut off and they'll leave you alone. But if you need a diagnostic of a flamingo, if you think someone is a flamingo, the best way to ascertain they're a flamingo is have a meeting with them and be respectful, do your preparation, be interested in them, and what you will see is they have no interest in you or any other person. So of course this is very sad for the development of collaboration or collegiality, but it's profoundly destructive of student learning, because a supervisor must park their ego to enable the career of a student. And the flamingo just simply cannot do this. They don't care about you. They don't care about anybody. They don't care about anybody unless they are of use to them. They hold no sense of responsibility at all. They attach themselves, they hook in to the achievements of others, and they claim them, and they claim fame through association. So this is reflected glory just gone mad. But the key is to give the flamingo flattery, if you will, but respect them, and then move on quickly. You'll gain nothing productive from a flamingo, but it is important, if you can, and this is hard, try and keep the relationship civil, because if they turn on you, they'll scratch you to death. 3, recognize the value of silence. Flamingos love to tell their career narratives. They love to talk and talk and talk and talk how important, how successful they are. Now, obviously, in the superficiality of our times, these career narratives are endlessly rewarded. But of course, we know that the flamingo has siphoned off the ideas of others and associated themselves with the success of others to get on. The best strategy that I have discovered, and I use it on a daily basis, when the flamingo starts the narrative, let me tell you, when they start that narrative, yawn, the strategy I use now is completely shut down, silence, because they want applause, they want acclaim, they want acknowledgement for how special they are. And the easiest way to critique a flamingo is to stop giving them attention. Now, in an earlier post, and thank you for the incredible feedback on this one, we talked about the power of silence, particularly the ambivalent power of silence. So the easiest way to deflate the flamingo is to be silent around them. And this is a good strategy because firstly, it does not give the flamingo information. They're unable to rip off anybody's ideas or claim their non-existent role in that research. But also the flamingos troll people. They troll people for their successes so that they can insert themselves, align themselves with successful people so they can bounce off the reflected glory. So the best way to stop the flamingo, stop the exploitation, is silence. The strategy works really, really well for social media. Here we go. Now, of course, the flamingo was born for social media platforms to create those pseudo-intimacies and relationships and connections. Now, they rely on people that they do not know, and they connect with people that they do not know and configure that pseudo-relationship. So the best way to manage a flamingo online is to leave their posts completely untouched. No like, no love, no comment, just leave their posts hanging in the digital paddock. I'm amazed when people get sort of invested in conversations online with flamingos. This pseudo-intimacy is of no benefit to you, and further, if those people are done later on in their career for some sort of authorship or impropriety, then your connection with them is going to do you as well. So use silence. As I've always said, silence is a superpower. Now, Wilbeth Sanchez, and oh, I love this research, recognised the value of denying attention and admiration to flamingos, denying special treatment, denying any argument, and simply walking away from the bait that they've laid out for you. Remain silent and focus on you and your honest, hard-working research pathway. 4. Remember that the flamingo does not know very much, so be wary of their advice. It is amazing to me to watch flamingos stress their brilliance as supervisors and as researchers. Now, social media allows people, particularly LinkedIn, we'll get to LinkedIn in a second, allows people who have basically done nothing in their life to sort of claim themselves as being an expert. I've seen so many people on LinkedIn in particular who were, let's be kind, pretty mediocre PhD students, pretty mediocre researchers. They got a job, they were lucky, and then they're proceeding to tell people how much they know about doctoral education. Most of these people I would not trust to go grocery shopping unaided. And can I say, I know a lot about these people because Flamingo via association, invariably I'm sort of tagged in the post to offer sort of validation of their expertise in doctoral education. And I, of course, leave it hanging in the digital paddock. Okay, so you need to really be careful who you're believing here. There's never been more information for you as a student, for us as citizens, to assess the expertise of a scholar. So go to Google Scholar, please, and see what they have done. And go to Google. Look for evidence that they know what they're doing. So when you're checking articles, check if they've been freeloading postdocs. Can they actually do it? Have they simply added themselves to articles with 10, 20, 200 multiple authors? Look at their writing career. And the best way to understand a flamingo is find a talk that's available online, a keynote at a conference if you can, when they're on their own and they have to deliver. They have to deliver, they have to take questions. Best way to check it, see if they can front up and actually do it. And invariably, the flamingo is all flash and hasn't got the research to back it up. So look for evidence that any of us as humans know what we're doing and see if there is evidence for their talk about their expertise. Now, this is so important when you're assessing a supervisor. It's important because you're going to have to follow the advice of a supervisor. So you need evidence that they know what they're doing. Social media, remember, amplifies the flamingo. It renders them pinker than normal. And also it amplifies pretenders more generally. So what happens is flamingos gain colour and they gain power from the people that walk with them, that comment about them, that engage with them. So be aware, this is an important moment, I mustn't get upset. I want you as a student, you as a citizen, you as a human, to be aware of the power that you hold today. Now, I remember my beloved late husband, Steve Redhead, and I, we recorded a podcast, I think about 2011. I'll try and find it for you. And we recommended, in fact, we begged students to please do your homework. Before you select a supervisor, come on, dig in and actually find out about this person. Check if they can write. Check if they can read. Check if they can draft. So that was an important story in and of itself. But what makes this story, what gives this story a bit of a kicker is when many years later, multiple jobs later, an older academic, an old emeritus professor who in his career had been a Deputy Vice-Chancellor Research, wrote to Steve and I in outrage, anger, about this podcast. You know, we've done hundreds of podcasts, but about this podcast, angry that we'd empowered students, angry that Steve and I had told students how to verify the expertise of their supervisor, that students don't have a right to check the expertise of their supervisor. That critique came from a former DVC research. So you know what? Claim your space. Claim your rights. You take back your power. Recognise the flamingo and know deep in yourself that you deserve better support than they can provide. 5, focus on developing your own confidence rather than building the confidence of your supervisor. The flamingo is so dangerous to students because students are endlessly marginalised, ignored, decentered. And look, confidence is a weird thing. And so often, too many students leave their confidence in the hands of their supervisors. And of course, those supervisors with all that power can destroy your life and simply chew up students and use them as the fodder for their own success. Now, Scott Allen defined confidence as those not needing external validation or social evidence. End of quote. Interesting phrase. So confidence involves developing a relationship with yourself, respecting who you are when you're alone with yourself. Now, Franklin Roosevelt, and I use this quote a lot, it's very meaningful to me, stated that, quote, confidence thrives on honesty, honour, on the sacredness of obligations, on faithful protection and unselfish performance. Without them, it cannot live. End of quote. I would argue to start developing that in all of ourselves, we need to stop thinking in extremes. We live in times of extremes. We have to stop this. We have to stop minimising behaviours and intentions. We've got to stop maximising behaviours and intentions. We've got to stop living in these emotional extremes. And I think what the flamingo teaches us is the importance of parking emotion, creating a different culture of gratefulness, of appreciation, of being humble, of walking gently on the earth. As Ryan Crowe has shown, it is necessary in our times to think about the nature of motivation, and particularly motivations in the workplace. And he talks about, what a great phrase this is, he talks about, quote, prioritising the poorest options, end of quote. That's our time, prioritising the poorest options. So at times, for you, the flamingo may be the least of your poorest options. Now, they're not a great option for a supervisor, they're not a great option for a citizen. But if you maintain your standards, you maintain your privacy, your separation, and you remain reflexive about what is important, then you can survive the flamingo. But what I'd say to you is, I want you to watch the flamingos. I want you to learn from the flamingos. And what you're learning is how not to supervise a PhD. What you're learning is how not to behave in higher education. Empathy, decency, respect, honour matter. And the flamingo will be caught out one day. They'll be caught out breaching authorship guidelines, social, sexual harassment. They're going to be caught, a lawyer's going to get called in on speed dial. They're going to get caught. So watch them, understand them, and never ever be like them. Know that the obstacle is the way, not something that you step over. We must never step over struggles or obstacles. We must never step over people to enable our pathway to success. I wish you love, light and peace. T and Placido out.